Welcome back to the show. I am testing out a new microphone today because Andy will say that this is a classic move. I decided that I had made peace with the audio not sounding great in the last episode, and to reward myself for making peace with that, I got a microphone set up with my Amazon money that I won from a project at work. So I don't know if I really made peace with the way the audio sounded or if I was just using it as an excuse. Like, I showed willingness to be fine with the way things sounded, but I would like it to sound a little bit better. So I don't know how this one will go. So far, I feel like it's pretty decent. I think maybe there might be some more variability, but it claims it has a hard limiter. Anyways, I was talking to Tom about it, and he said he enjoys the format and that AI could not do this. So that feels nice. And it does feel like a phone call for some people. I know my mom said in one of the episodes, I said that Andy had just got home, and she felt the urge to say bye because it feels very much like a phone call, which is what I'm going for. And on the topic of AI, I was thinking this episode, I think I'll call it AI for Moms, because Mom was wondering what's the best way for regular people who aren't coding all the time to use AI? Like, as a software developer, I prefer to use Claude's models, or Anthropic's models. Claude Sonnet was really great. I like Claude Opus has been really decent to work with. But for my own personal AI subscription, I pay for Google Gemini because it comes with decent storage and some other Google benefits, and I really like that. So, yeah, I find that for me, helpful ways that I use AI in regular life has been, like, for example, this weekend we went to a fundraiser at Rock, the horse riding place. They do therapy for children and various people that helps with mental health, emotional health, and just like, it's a really nice charity. You'd have to look it up online. If you look up Rock Healing with Horses or Rock and Ride, something like that, you'll find it. But where I'm going with this is they had a theme of Western wear. And I do not have very much Western wear because people who are familiar with me know that I tend to kind of favor a uniform style of clothing where I'll either wear jorts, typically black jorts, or gray tech pants slash slacks that are nice to wear because they're stretchy, and then usually some variation of a plain t-shirt. But I am trying to get better at participating in group activities and going along with themes. Like, Andy and I have never really been like costume people per se. Like, we actually haven't ever done costumes together in the 12 years we've been together for Halloween. So this was new for us, of wanting to do something much more theme orientated. But where I'm going with that is we went to Goodwill to look for stuff. Andy found some wonderful cowgirl boots that looked great. I found a nice pair of boots I really liked. They were in the women's section. They were 9.5. I usually wear size 10. And men's, I wear an 8.5, but women's shoes typically have a nicer variety and availability, especially at like thrift stores and stuff usually. Whereas I feel like men might kind of burn through their shoes, so you're not going to necessarily have as many like fun examples. So I found these great. They were kind of a greenish suede cap toe combat boot style thing, which I really liked. They were too small, but I have boot stretchers, so I stretched them out a bit, put alcohol and water on them to kind of like help the cloth stretch a bit more, and was able to do that for several hours before the event. And they fit decently. I prefer barefoot style shoes, so my feet are really wide, like feet should be. So they weren't going to work for long-term use, but I really liked them. So afterwards, I took pictures of them and showed them to Gemini and said, what kind of boots are these? I showed the inside label, which said Himalaya, and I guess it was some brand, Rock or something, that didn't have any more boots that I could find online. But I was able to say, how would I find these boots? Because I need them in a slightly larger size, ideally a wider fit. And they gave me several things to search for. And because I didn't actually know to search for faux suede wide cap toe combat boots for women or Victorian boots, whatever it was they wanted me to search. So it was nice being able to just simply upload those pictures and get some results to figure out what exactly I was looking for. So for me, I find that AI is a lot more like a good targeted Google search, because essentially that's what it's been trained on, is like just billions of documents and data online. So a lot of times you are going to find answers that will link back to Stack Overflow or Reddit or different blogs and stuff. So I find it's nice for asking questions that I don't quite know how to formulate well, or kind of being able to be pointed in the right direction. Like, it's very helpful to have a starting point for what you're looking at. And it's been nice to sometimes on construction projects being able to take pictures of something and say, what's the best way to deal with this? Like when I resealed the shower in our bathroom, I noticed some of the caulk wasn't curing as well. And Gemini and I looked at it together. And turns out she, as I have it set to a lady's voice, noticed that I caulked over the weep holes so there wouldn't be air circulating behind them. So that would be part of why they hadn't cured in the 24 hours I had expected them to. And it's nice being able to get answers like that. Of course, the information won't necessarily be accurate. Like, it's funny, I actually asked Gemini, what is Business Boy Logic? And I realized I never actually talked about the title of the show because it's something I just picked randomly. But I asked Google Gemini about it, and it gave a description that was actually surprisingly accurate. And it mentioned the squirrel crisis of 2024, March 2024. But interestingly enough, because its source said the description talked about March 2024, but the date said February 20th, which was February 20th of this year. Google Gemini, when I asked more about the squirrel crisis of March 2024, it said that it was an inside joke because the episode, interestingly enough, was published in February 2024. So it was talking about events that hadn't yet transpired. So it thought that maybe there's something different going on, where the reality is it was just reading the SEO summary wrong, or just kind of getting the details together, like it's doing a fancy autocomplete. But it was kind of nice, like a little bit of an ego stroke to be able to see Gemini talking about my podcast. It also knew about World's Strongest Opinions. But overall, I find that AI is nice for being able to get answers to stuff that I'm looking for. Like, it's nice as kind of like a quick, sometimes a fact check, but you always do have to check it because it does make things up and just connect data wrong. But it has been handy to be able to search for things that I don't quite know what I'd be Googling for. Like today's query was about filters for a box fan. And it actually gave several good examples that I could just buy HVAC filters and just put it on the back of the 20-inch box fan. So I have some filters on the way. So that was decent. And then I've asked it some gardening questions, like how to best deal with our grass seed, because our lawn is mostly weeds. We don't necessarily water it enough. We are watering it more because we did have foundation issues, and that repair was pricey. Not as crazy as it could be, but I'd rather not have to pay for something like that again. So it's really helpful to have it as kind of like an advisor, or just kind of something to bounce ideas off of. And I find another thing that's helpful, because it is using AI on the back end, is now Google Translate for Spanish and French. They actually have AI conversations that you can do that are pretty fun. Like, it will actually give you a scenario like you're checking out of a hotel, and it'll give you several phrases or words that you need to use in the conversation. And once you've used all of the assigned phrases, it will actually mark the lesson as complete. And things like that are fun because it does well at doing more targeted Google searches, and it does well with languages or things that kind of have generally hard rules or a lot of documentation about them. It doesn't do well with things that are more abstract. So I find that it doesn't necessarily always fit every use case, but for me, it is nice being able to just bounce ideas off of, or look up things, or sometimes taking pictures of like the tree leaves to say, what kind of tree is this? Or what is happening with the bark on one of the trees? Turns out my parents got us bird feeders, and we put one up in one of the trees, and I noticed there's some kind of like red streaks appearing on the bark. And it turns out that the squirrels have been running up it and pulling off little chunks as they go. So it wasn't anything to worry about. Jim and I wanted me to walk around the tree to make sure it wasn't like a full circle, because ideally for a tree for its health, you want the bark to be continuous. You don't want it eaten all the way. And there's a tree in the very back of our yard that had some dead spots. It had a dead limb, and some of the bark had come off. And it told me, let's get rid of the dead branch, but keep some of the little offshoots that had come up and start watering it more. And we have been doing that, and it's been turning out really, really good. So that's been helpful. So I like it for things like that. And sometimes I actually will kind of use it as a proofreader and get advice, but I don't like it writing everything for me. Like, I always like to check its work. I like to verify it, but it is helpful to say, how do I run this idea, or how do I explain this better? Because I do typically, I mean, you all are listening to this show, so you're familiar with my conversational style, where even with writing, I can sometimes go over the same topic multiple times, or kind of do some kind of circular speaking or talking. So it's nice being able to say, can you clarify this? Can you make it more explicit? And part of the Google Gemini subscription I have, it comes with Notebook LM, which is nice because you can upload big articles of things you don't necessarily have time to read, and you can generate podcasts off of it, audio summaries, video summaries, and it really does help being able to break the information down. Of course, it will connect dots wrong, like I was saying. Like, it will sometimes see a date that's kind of close to one of the sentences and decide that whatever event it was talking about happened at that date, even though that date was actually in reference to something else. Or that date might have just been for one of the images that was in the article. So you do have to fact check it, take it with a grain of salt, because there is a hallucination rate. It does kind of just make up information sometimes, and that is just the reality of what it is, because it is just taking in tons and tons of data points and connecting them and saying, what's the most logical way all of this flows? And it is fun. Like, I think with Notebook LM, it's been fun being able to just hear nice little audio overviews of like scientific articles that I've come across, or like historical papers that I don't necessarily have time to go through. Or it's nice to sometimes just dump something in it, like a feed on the economic impact of the war in Iran. and being able to have an audio version of it that's usually it's a man and a woman kind of like sounds a lot like something you'd hear on NPR or Democracy Now. So it's a fun flow, and they actually just added the ability to interact with the podcast. Like you can actually, there's a push to talk thing where you can actually interrupt, ask a question, and they'll respond to you and be like, oh, like that's a great question. Like, thank you for joining us today. Like, we have a guest in the studio, like, and then it'll answer your question. And it actually does shape the flow of the podcast, which is really handy and fun to play with. So I think it's good for things like that. Like, I think it can be easy to rely on it for too many things. Like, I mean, there's the thing that happened, I think, in Australia where Deloitte used AI to write a analysis or something. They were contracted for a company. They were supposed to look into something for the Australian government or whatever and write a report on it. And they used AI that just made up court cases, it made up sources. It just kind of like hallucinated. So you definitely can't trust it for huge projects because you do have to go through and verify it. Like, I think that is an issue we are going to deal with in the future with a lot of the code coming out, because you have developers and CEOs and people talking about putting out like 37 lines of code a day, which there's no way you can humanly go through all of that and make sure it's okay. And that's a problem. It's kind of like the Deloitte consultancy paper, where it was so much information that it starts to lose the plot. So I find it's nice for very targeted things, and I like keeping whatever model I'm in like thinking mode so I can see its thoughts. And sometimes you do have to interrupt it to say, oh, that's not where we're going with this. Because it will seize on an idea. And if it gets the context wrong, that can just kind of go off in like a whole like tangent and everything. So it helps to be very specific, add context, add pictures if possible, and make sure it's for something very small and targeted. Because it will, as the volume of information increases, that hallucination rate and the rate of errors will increase by default, because it does have like a percentage of inaccuracy. And of course, the more data you have, the more inaccuracies you're going to get. So as far as AI for moms, I would say it's nice to use it as kind of a advanced Google search or something to kind of bounce ideas off of. Like, it is helpful for those things that like I don't even know what I would Google, but I can take a picture and say, hey, what's going on with this? Like, what's happening with this tree? Why is this not working properly? And it can kind of help connect the dots. So it's a lot like a co-pilot. It's like a ride-along person or ride-along entity that you can consult with. But I don't think we're at the point where it can truly be left to its own devices, because it does make issues. Like AWS or Amazon Web Services had a whole outage last year. And it seemed most likely it happened because of AI code. Like, if you want to see how code or a lot of the AI code works, you can look at Microsoft's recent software updates have had a lot of struggles. If you look at GitHub, the status page, Copilot and Actions, which are written by a lot of AI, their uptime is not good. And GitHub used to be really, really great about uptime all the time. And for those of you who aren't super technical, uptime is the availability of the service. Like, GitHub Actions is how people send code out to their sites, it's how you deploy things, it's how everything's connected and delivered. So to have bad uptime in that is not great. And to have bad uptime in Copilot is a problem. And of course, I mean, at this point, AI hasn't necessarily found a good way to be super sustainable because it is getting cheaper and everything, but there are power issues, there are supply issues, and the fact is that people don't like to pay very much for stuff. So I think a lot of times you have people either using the free models and using a lot of tokens, or you have power users that burn through a ton of tokens and resources. Like I routinely with Gemini will get into positions where like I actually can't make any more videos, or I can't make any more images with their Nano Banana for images, VO for videos, because I've used too many tokens. And even with Copilot, I'll run into token limits and throttling despite being on a corporate plan. So, and with the amount that I use, like I am getting a lot more benefit than I'm paying for. And that's not very financially sustainable. So things may change in the future, but I think for the average person, AI is really helpful at polishing things up and improving things, or giving you kind of like a jumping off point for a lot of things. It's decent for that, but it's not something that I would trust with a credit card, and I wouldn't trust it to necessarily make plans for me. But it is helpful when you can ask it things of like, we're planning a trip this weekend out to West Texas. What would be the best places to stay? What's a good plan? And it will be able to give you advice on like gas prices along the way, how to budget your time, where are good places to stop. So it's nice when you have like those things. So I think we're not anywhere near the singularity yet, but we are at a place where you have kind of a ride-along helper that you can consult at any time. And $20 a month for Gemini is not bad, especially now that they've upgraded the storage limits to 5 terabytes. I can store a ton of stuff on there. So that's been decent, but I realize this episode has been a lot of AI and just general stuff, but it really was kind of a mic check, just getting something out there. And once again, like I appreciate all of you all who listen to this. Like it's friends, it's family. My parents are wonderful. Mom, this episode's for you. That's why it's called AI for Moms. And yeah, thank you all for listening. And yeah, thank you all for taking time out of your days. I know this was kind of like an unstructured ramble, but to be fair, I don't think that's necessarily very unique for how this show operates. So yeah, here, let's see how the outro and everything works with this new system.